Welcome, everybody, to Surprised by Art, where we explore the surprises inherent in great works of art. My name is Kirk, and I'm going to choose a poem.
And my name is Luke, and I'm going to choose a painting for you, Kirk.
And we're going to surprise each other and you with these works of art. And this is based on a topic that you all voted on over at Surprised by Art Facebook group. So if you're interested in voting on this, go to the Surprised by Art Facebook group and you get to participate in all the after show stuff. So check that out. But Luke, why don't you tell us what the topic that everybody chose was?
Okay, so the topic is a romantic spark. Is that right? A romantic spark. Well, that sounds more like an explosion.
Well, a spark leads to an explosion.
Right? But I think that's a good differentiation. Well, we kind of packed the topics that were voted on with romantic stuff. So there were soulmates, and then there was the danger of lust. And soulmates was a very close second. And so
they actually ended up tying.
Oh, well, I hadn't voted yet. So
so it was after the fact. So it was after the deadline, but it did tie for soulmates and romantic spark.
And I think we can talk about soulmates here a little bit in contrast to romantic spark and how they might be a little bit different.
Okay.
But I'm curious just in general, because a romantic spark is something that I feel like I've seen a lot of in art and literature, in movies.
Yeah.
And it's, I've had to mine back in my life and think about the sparks and a lot of non-sparks that are there.
Those are called fizzles. Right? Fizzles or just like, falling on your face type things, which I think is probably the majority of the time, right?
Maybe that should be a topic for another time.
Yeah, falling on your face.
Because I'll have lots of stories to tell about that.
Yes, I have none. That has never happened to me. I've 100%, bat 1,000, baby.
Okay, well, good for you. Good for you. Maybe I can pick up some tips.
False. But, not true.
So here's what I'm wondering, Kirk. Are there movies that you think about that have an element of what you feel is like a romantic spark in them?
I think that all romantic comedies, that's the essence of the story. That's like especially when you look at up to, 2010 or so, if you look at 40, 50 years of it, it tends to be, like the cliche that people talk about where, they ride off into the sunset and everything's perfect. Life's not like that. And to some degree that's true, right? Life isn't like that, where it's just life is a sunset and everything's perfect and la-di-da-da-da. But the movies, what they're capturing, I think, is the romantic spark. It is that initial moment of, the meet cute that you hear in Hollywood where two couples meet, and then it's how they fell in love. It's about the spark occurring. And then the rest of their life is how I would, look at as hopefully the spark continuing or possibly exploding into a lifetime of love. But if you look at Notting Hill, which is one of the most popular romantic comedies of all time, it tends to be, one party is kind of infatuated with the other one, doesn't think they're in the same league. Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. And one's a movie star, one's a failure at a bookstore, bookstore owner, used travel bookstore of all things. And he doesn't travel anywhere, which I think is part of the idea. And then, but the whole thing is she does kind of fall in love with him in a sense, but it can't work out. And the whole movie is how they're going to, make the romance work. But the essence of it, I think, is this first initial spark and then making that, happen, making the spark happen.
So would you say, because you're describing a little bit like the whole movie in essence is like the romantic spark, but would you say that there's a particular point in the movie where that spark is ignited?
That's what I would call the meet cute sometimes that. But there's other moments, because there's a lot of movies where the woman, for instance, doesn't like the man, or it's a fake relationship that turns into a real relationship, right?
Okay,
like Meet the Millers, where they pretend.
There.
Yeah.
So that a romantic spark involves not just one person seeing and being struck by lightning and saying, "Oh wow, she's amazing," or "Oh my goodness, he's so handsome, I'm in love." It's not like Romeo seeing Juliet across the room.
Yeah. And can I So I
Well, hold on a
wrote.
moment. Let me finish this point here.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I mean, who isn't
Of
going to
course,
bring up
I know Romeo and Juliet.
Juliet for this? But
That's a good
it's
point.
no, but I was actually thinking to begin with what Romeo and Juliet what might be like a good romantic spark kind of story, but that initial meeting, if I'm remembering correctly, it's Romeo sees her, and so maybe a
Yes.
romantic spark there's one where you see the person and fall in love, and then there's the other where there's the two of you who start to have a connection together. And there's
Yeah.
a spark between the two of you. So that's actually you know what? That's making me think about this concept a little bit differently. Okay. So
It's the combination versus just one side.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I was thinking now go ahead with what you were saying about Romeo and
Well,
Juliet.
I actually found the first moment when Romeo sees Juliet to get the language. I'm not going to read the whole passage, but he says his first line, "Oh, I'm going to say does for doth. Oh, she does teach the torches to burn bright." So talk about spark and flames, right? And the kind of idea. And he at the end he says, "Did my heart love till now?"
Yeah.
And so, and so that's a kind of motif, right? It's like this almost awakening. Like I've finally been awakened. I've finally been made aware of something. And I think that's kind of part of the romantic aspect of the spark, right? It's like there's a switch, and you see this in romantic comedies and romance movies of all type all the time, where again, they didn't, it's like the best friend who's just a best friend. And then all of a sudden the girl, like I really love Ryan Reynolds movies ever since Van Wilder. And, there's that movie Just Friends that he did in, I think, the early 2000s with Amy Smart. And, he's like this fat guy, and then he goes out and loses weight. And then he comes back 10 years later and tries to win the girl, but he's still kind of goofy and messes it all up. And they're just friends, right? But then there's a moment when there's kind of a switch, right? Where she sees him a little bit differently. And sometimes in that kind of switch is what I think of when I think of the romantic spark. And it could be in either party. It can be the man, with the woman too. Like the man's a playboy and he only wants to sleep around. And then all of a sudden he sees her for something else. So.
Okay. So all right. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought up that it can be a moment after you know the person, but there's some new facet of them that is exhibited that maybe you discover or that is newly meaningful to you. So as I've been thinking about just examples of romantic sparks, it occurred to me that a lot of the great literature that I love doesn't have satisfying romantic spark moments to me. Because I was thinking about romantic spark in connection to soulmates. And when you talk about soulmates, you think of something more substantive, that there are two individuals who are clearly defined, who match up in a sense, who see something in each other, and you know each of them very well. But a romantic spark often in literature, just like the Romeo and Juliet example, is often, oh, she's beautiful. And I'm having these feelings, these hormones, and it's often not premised on something more substantive about what matters to you in your life and what matters to you in a potential mate. And I was thinking about, okay, what are some moments, romantic sparks that kind of give an indication that there is something deeper and more meaningful there? And there's one particular movie that comes back to mind for me, and admittedly, it's actually, I think, more of a one-sided spark, but it's one where there is a deep connection immediately, and the strike of love, that spark of love that initiates it, is based on something profound. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Impromptu, Kirk. Impromptu.
No, I haven't seen that one. I'll check it out.
It's a romantic comedy, and it has Hugh Grant in it, and Hugh Grant plays Chopin, and it's about the love affair between Chopin and the authoress George Sand, and the spark for that movie is she sneaks into a room to get away from a lover, and she happens to sneak into Chopin's room and hides under the piano while he's playing the piano, and then as he's playing, he starts to play this amazingly romantic piece. And I'm going to have to remember what that romantic piece is.
Well, sorry, we could put it in the show notes.
There's There's wind coming through the windows because she went through the windows, and he stops playing, and she immediately gets out from below the piano. She doesn't know she's there, and says, "Oh, do not stop. You're in the middle of a miracle." And at that moment, she's just in love with the creator of this music.
Yeah.
And that's her meet cute.
Yeah.
But that capacity for this profound emotion and art that she sees in that moment in a kind of effeminate, weakly Chopin is the spark that forms the basis for what goes on after with their relationship.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've been fascinated by, and I don't know, maybe this is something that might be a fun exercise to do for you, Kirk, or for you, dear listener, which is to think back to your romantic relationships and to think about that romantic spark moment,
Mm-hmm.
and to see what was embedded in that romantic spark that led to the meaning of that romantic relationship that you had.
Yeah.
If there was something there at the beginning.
No, I think that's really interesting. It's something we can explore as we explore these artworks that I chose and that you chose, that I think will help expand our understanding of that concept of what do these artists have to say about a romantic spark? Because there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of personal examples we can bring to this, but of course, artists have, I think, a unique insight, especially into love. It's something they seem to be obsessed with. If you read poetry, I mean, there's thousands of love poems, love songs, and love movies. And I think for a good reason. It's a big part of our lives. So why don't we jump into your painting, and you could surprise me, and maybe I'll have a romantic spark for your painting.
All right.
How do you like that?
I'm very okay. I'm interested to see what you think about this. It's one that is at the National Gallery of Art, and I'd like to recommend that if you can see the artwork while you're listening, that's great. If you can catch a glimpse of the artwork before we dive into it, that's wonderful. And Kirk, where can our listener see the artwork?
Oh, yes. Good question, or good reminder. So everybody, we recommend go check out the artwork, but don't look at the title. Don't look at the author or the painter until after we discuss this. I mean, you can if you don't, but go into the show notes. You can go to troubadourmag.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to wherever you're listening to this podcast. So that way you can go and view on the blog the actual painting that Luke is going to be showing to me.
All right, Kirk, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Would you give a quick title for this one?
I will.
Here it is.
I mean, I think of smitten is the first
That's great.
word that comes to mind.
All right, wonderful.
But there's two figures, so let me get a chance to. Smitten only replies to one of these figures for sure. I like this painting right away. I'll just say that. I don't know why I like it. I just know that I like it. So there's two women, a younger girl of some sort, girl as in probably teenager of some sort, maybe even young, early 20s, and then a more modest woman off to her, I guess, right from her angle. They are at a windowsill. I believe that's a windowsill. And the young girl is leaning over with her hand on her chin, on her cheek, actually, leaning forward. And she's clearly looking at something. Probably someone would be my assumption, because she's looking adoringly. Like, there's some love in there. Now, as I look at this older, and by older, I don't mean ancient, I mean middle-aged woman. I actually noticed that it looks like she's smiling. So it's not like some.
Yeah, she could be wearing a face mask.
She could be wearing a face mask.
She's got
the cheeks that are coming up. I see a little bit.
Covering her mouth with that whatever the headdress.
She's
covering her mouth with that, but you still see the smile in the crow's feet of her eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's also smiling. She's kind of covering up. She's a little maybe coy, and she's also infatuated. So she's not the old. I assume she's older. It could be that they're similar ages, but I assume she's like 30s, 40s older. but she's not like the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the chaperone that's trying to protect this woman, and like, the old nursemaid that's like, get over here, don't look at that man, right?
It's okay, like whoever. What's the in Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet
Uh
has Anon, good nurse, Anon. This
yeah,
is
the
not the
good
good
nurse,
nurse
yeah.
who's telling her don't go to the balcony window for Romeo.
Exactly. Yes. It's
So
not that
you're
in this
suggesting
sense.
that it looks like she's maybe encouraging this maybe little interaction that might be going on.
Possibly even living vicariously through this woman, like, ooh, I wish I can get me some of that, right? Like that kind of she
Okay,
at
that's
least
interesting.
like
That's an interesting quote to have for her. What would you quote for the girl who's looking adoringly?
she even looks like some actress I can't name right now. I'm trying like her face. Um Man, I mean, smitten is the word. I mean, she would probably look up to the nurse and says, "Wow, isn't he wonderful?" Is the words that I would get her to say next.
And
Um,
could you imagine her saying that just right now in her
or
own
even right now,
thoughts?
like in her head, like, isn't he
Yeah.
the, perfect human? It's, I get the impression she's seeing someone that she is seeing for the first time, but maybe knew about by reputation type thing. Like, ooh, this
What's
person.
giving you that impression?
Just the look on her face. I don't have anything specific.
Yeah.
And she's not doing anything concrete to, put that as the thing she's doing.
So here's a question. Do you think that the person that she's looking at is looking back at her and their eyes are meeting, or is this her just looking at him?
So my impression is her looking at him.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm feeling too, that there's some kind of she's leaned over like she's taking in a show. And
There you go. That's what I was trying to get at. Yes.
and she's really absorbed into just staring at him. And I could imagine him kind of maybe there walking the streets with his buddies or like doing something, and I'll call her the nurse, uh, who's got a headdress on, maybe a little bit more modest than the young girl. She looks like she's halfway. Oh, I wish I'd get me some of that, but also kind of embarrassed too. Like, oh
Embarrassed.
my
Yeah.
goodness.
It's, kind of prudish feeling.
Yeah, that there is something kind of slightly scandalous going on.
Have you seen
But
My
I
Big
think,
Fat Greek Wedding?
yeah, a long time ago.
So this girl, like, although she's much more attractive than the girl which is made in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, made to look, more plain. But when she first sees the man and she's a waitress, she's carrying coffee and she just stares at him for like 10 seconds, like in the middle of this thing.
I've got to see that scene. That's a great connection.
And then
Okay,
she's like fumbling around when he notices, and she pours the wrong people coffee. And, the guy is with his friend and he is like, "Can I get coffee?" He's like waving the coffee cup in front of her, and she goes over to the handsome man and gives him the coffee, even though he didn't ask for any, so it's like that kind of feeling of, that's what I get when, she's looking at him, adoringly and like, wow. Type thing.
All right. So I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with this artwork. It's life size. And
wow, really?
Yes. And it's at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And I've seen it a couple of times. And walking into the room, guess what you feel like?
They're looking at you. Oh, no way. Like they're looking at you?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And so,
I'm gonna have to get one of these, because like that, like everybody deserves to have someone look at them like this. I think that's how I put it.
I love that statement.
Well, maybe not everybody, but most people. Most good people. If you're a good person. Okay, you'll notice
having that feeling of someone looking at you like, oh my God, you're wonderful.
So can I tell you a personal story now, real quick?
Sure.
So one of the times that I would say in my personal life when I was probably most in love, like a real love in my life, the moment that we had known each other for like 6-7 months, and there was a moment when I was doing something, in the world, my job actually, and she was in the audience and she looked at me like that. And that's when I would say that was the romantic spark for us.
That's great. I like that. Because there's something about her that seems unaware of you noticing her.
Yes. Oh, that's a good thing too. A good way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that maybe is also what you're responding to with her in the audience there. So yeah, it's this is kind of a one-sided kind of spark where we're seeing the spark for her. But when I walk into the room, I'm feeling the spark too.
Mm.
I'm, I always say, put yourself in the place of the characters that are there. This one is you are the character that's there.
Yes.
That is having this connection. And I'm immediately in love with her because of this kind of forthright look of wondering adoration that she has.
The power of like.
The power of like and the kind of like that she's showing.
Kind of like, well, what I mean by that is like one of the things that, like you learn in sales, for instance, but I think like dating coaches talk about this all the time, is that there's a power in, if you let somebody know that you have feelings for them, that can spark the feeling in them that maybe wasn't there before, that they didn't see you in that way. Right. Yeah. But then once you make it clear, like, oh, I feel this way for you, then they're like, oh, I never thought about this person that way. And then they can start seeing you like that. And then they start saying, oh, this person is smart. This person is good looking. This person is kind, all these things that wasn't there. It was a spark. The spark was you looking and liking them first. This is the power of liking.
So I think I see that component of it here, that power of liking. And I want to add that there is characterization as well here for her that makes her a certain kind of person that I like even more beyond just that she likes me. And because if you change the painting slightly, and you take her away and you make the focus on the other woman with her her fabric over her face, covering her mouth, slightly embarrassed. She's still showing that she's liking you and she's intrigued.
Yes.
But it's a different kind. And I'm not as attracted to that as I am to the younger one who's there. And it makes me think of that scene from I really like that you brought up My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I'm very curious now. But it also makes me think of that scene from Impromptu, where Jean Sand is just so openly adoring of Chopin. It's like, you are a god.
Yeah.
And that kind of open adoration shows something about her and her soul that I really, really like. Yep. So this artwork for me was a kind of a mutual spark when you first walk into that room and you see that person, the kind of person that you want to like you.
Well, and remember how I said smitten was the first word, but when I saw it again, the thing that I said was, I like this painting right away and I don't know why. Right. And I think, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, because it's these two figures. It would be different if it was just one or the other. If it was just the nurse, I might still like it. I'd think, oh, she's kind of cute, but if it was the nurse without the young maiden, looking at me, because you're right, they are looking right at you. And if it's life size and you walk in this room and you see these two women looking at you, I can almost imagine it. Like you walk into a room, it's like these, women looking at you. It's like, wow, okay, hi, how you doing? And, so you get the, if it was just the older woman, I would still probably like it because of the way she's looking at me, but I don't think it would be as powerful as both of them, because I don't see her face, right? Like I'd have to look a little closer. Is she just looking at me, or is she liking me? And then I'd see, oh, she is, I can tell she's smiling, but the kind of coyness gets in the way of it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I like that. There's no coyness on the main character. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very proud and open.
The title for this artwork is underwhelming. And I think it's something like Two Women at a Window.
Really?
So
that's even better, actually. The painting speaks for itself.
Sometimes I like a little bit more insight, and often titles like this are given by the curators of the museum or as part of a catalog by some previous owner. So, but nothing very specific. The artist is named Esteban Murillo, Murillo, Spanish artist, I believe 17th century, I want to say.
All right.
So Esteban Murillo. But yes,
I love it. The power of liking. That's what I'm going to call this. The beauty of like, something like that. I'll have
All
to
right.
think about it. But I like it.
So,
That one's wonderful.
great. Glad you enjoyed it. Now, I'm intrigued about taking a look at this poem.
All right. So let's get into the poem. Now, the poem is, I think, going to be quite different, as it always is. But let's see if we can find any similarities and differences. Only thing I'm going to set up is that the word. I don't want you to get lost right away. This is a poem from a while ago. The word troth means truth. It's the first in the first line. So just listen, and then we'll discuss it afterwards. But I will say that it's a little bit of a challenging poem. So the poem is called "The Good Morrow" by John Donne, and here we go. I wonder, by my troth, what thou and I did till we loved. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly? Or snorted we in the seven sleepers' den? 'Twas so, but this all pleasures fancies be, if ever any beauty I did see, which I desired and got, 'twas but a dream of thee. And now, good morrow to our waking souls, which watch not one another out of fear. For love, all love of other sights controls, and makes one little room and everywhere. Let sea discoverers to new worlds have gone, let maps to other, worlds on worlds have shown. Let us possess one world, each hath one, and is one. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest. Where can we find two better hemispheres, without sharp north, without declining west? Whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike that none do slacken, none can die. All right.
You weren't kidding.
Yeah,
This is a challenging poem, and even you sent this to me an hour ago, and I took a quick look at it, and even so, there's a lot in here that I feel like I don't have a clear idea of. I've got vague notions. So here's my vague summary. It's about two lovers, and it's basically saying, you know what, you're the world to me. You're the only one that really matters. And then it goes on, I think, an extended metaphor about how we are each a world, or that's what we care about. Mm-hmm. You're a world, I'm a world, and that's all that matters. Let the other travelers go do their thing. But the world began when I got to know you, or I was in love with you. And that's it. So that's as much as I think I've got. I've got several little questions. I think the first stanza was the one that I felt was clearest.
Okay, so let's
for me.
Let's go through that one then.
Okay, so I'll reread parts of it and go up to a certain point where I'm not quite clear.
Yeah.
I wonder by my troth what thou and I did till we loved. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly?
Mm-hmm.
Or snorted we in the seven sleepers' den? So the seven sleepers' den is the part that I'm really getting stumped on. The rest of it is...
Forget that for now. Just do the first three lines. I'll tell you the seven sleepers' den in a minute.
Okay, so the first three lines there are, I guess, we had some fun childhood, right? But it didn't really add up to anything until we fell in love.
So think about, he's saying, I wonder by my truth, what did we do before we loved? That's his opening question.
Yeah.
And then he says, were we not weaned till then? Now, weaned, of course, think about breastfeeding, and then, think about, weaning off of that and, into other foods. And he talks about, but sucked on country pleasures childishly. Now, this isn't, we don't have the connotation, but back then country basically meant low, rustic, peasant, right? Not high and refined and moral, I guess you could say. So, I'll just say what I think he's saying here is, and I have a translation that I've put together, that what did we do before we loved, right? Were we still breastfeeding? Did we only enjoy simple childish things? As in, what, like, think about the first line of Romeo and Juliet, or the line that I said here, did my heart love till now, as one of the last right? Like, what was I doing? It's a kind of the way I think of it, as an awakening. What was I doing? I was just, hanging out with these chickies.
More than loving. It's, did I even exist till I started loving you?
Yes. And I think it is a deep poem in that sense. And let me tell you the Seven Sleepers Den thing. This is an illusion that is
or snorted we in the Seven Sleepers Den.
Yeah,
snorted.
Snorted. Well, snore. Just think snoring. But
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So this is an illusion I had to look up. It's a Christian tradition that I wasn't even aware of, and the idea is during the time of Emperor Decius in Rome, there were these 7 men who rebelled, and they wanted away from him, so they went in a cave. And the Roman emperor sealed them up, and they fell asleep for 200 years and came out later in a Christian era aspect. They were awakened in this new era of Christianity. And so they slept through it. And he's kind of saying, are we like these people who have been asleep for 200 years, snoring in our caves, now to be awakened in the time of, the Enlightenment in Christ and things like that, the truth.
Okay, so basically, did we have a childhood where we sucked on our mother's teat and slept a lot? Because I didn't feel like I existed until I fell in love with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
okay, so the next part of that is, 'twas so, but this, all pleasures fancies be. If ever any beauty I did see, which I desired and got, 'twas but a dream of thee. So even when there was something that was pleasurable in my childhood, it was because I was dreaming of you.
Yeah. All right. That's kind of, that's how I put it. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. So that next stanza it goes into, all right, what is it?
So just think of morrow as morning, by the way. And now good morning to our waking souls.
Yeah. So this is the waking souls are waking to the love of each other.
Yep.
So, and now good morrow to our waking souls, which watch not one another out of fear. So Can you help me with that? Which watch not one another out of fear?
So if you're with a loved one and you think of these two people in bed, and if you wake up and you look at her and you're afraid of something in the context of lovers, what is the thing you're probably afraid of?
That she's not going to love you anymore?
That she's not going to love you anymore? I think that's in watch not one another. So the fear of not being loved back, and possibly the fear that they're cheating on you, that there's a jealousy going on here, right?
Okay.
So, it's like I don't remember there's a song, it's like on the tip of my tongue, but it's, that loving feeling has gone. And, that idea that's the fear of the loving feeling leaving, of being jealous of the other person.
Yeah. Okay. So they're not afraid. There's no fear here in their relationship. Okay. For love, all love of other sights controls and makes one little room and everywhere. So I think out of the whole poem, that might be my favorite line. And makes one little room and everywhere.
What do you think that means?
Well, it goes on to describe all these other worlds that discoverers and maps can have. And you know what? That doesn't matter. All these other worlds and all this travel and newfound continents and so forth, because everything that I need is right here in this room, and makes one little room and everywhere. All right. Let us possess one world, each hath one and is one. What do you make of that last line of that stanza? Let us possess one world, each hath one and is one.
So I think that what you were saying is relevant to this whole second passage, in terms of you have like in this room, if you look at it literally, that's going to be the entirety of the universe. And now there's going to be explorers like Christopher Columbus going across the sea. They're going to be discovering new things. We're discovering each other. This is our universe. And he's going to talk about the hemisphere later.
Got it.
This is our universe. And let us possess one world, that's us, Each has one world. You, madam, my love, are a world, and is one. I am a world as well. So
Got it. So there's
and
a
then
distinction
together we're
between
one world.
everywhere. There's a distinction between everywhere and the world. A
Yeah.
world is the planet within the universe. The universe, this room now is the universe for us, and you and I are a planet facing each other in this universe.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then the third stanza is about exploring these planets as we look at each other.
Yes.
My face in thine eye, thine and mine appears, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest. So my heart is not on my sleeve, my heart is on my face.
Yeah, our hearts are visible on our face. Yep.
Yeah. Where can we find two better hemispheres without sharp north, without declining west? So sharp north and declining west, I don't quite understand. So that whole sentence again, or that whole clause is, where can we find two better hemispheres without sharp north, without declining west? So what's going on there, Kirk?
If you think about it, so he's trying to design his world as even better than the actual world that the world outside of the room, right? The world that the travelers experience. So in the far north, what do we know about the North Pole?
Oh, sharp cold. It's
bitter
freezing.
cold, right? Yeah. And decline. Where does the sun set?
Okay.
In the west, right? So the idea
there are no sunsets. There's no cold.
Yeah. So where can we find two better globes without the cold of the north, or the darkness that comes when the sun sets in the west? So it's kind of, he's now couching this in eternal. It's like an eternal morning.
Got it. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. Okay.
This is the most confusing to me, actually.
All right. So I'll read the last three lines again, because that's the first of the last three. So the last three lines. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike, that none do slacken, none can die.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm fully confused.
Well, okay. So I would actually take those as slightly separated. So, because you have that semicolon. So whatever dies was not mixed equally. The only thing this is like a chemistry thing that I'm not familiar with. But
can I offer my theory?
Go for it.
So whatever dies was not mixed equally. So whatever dies in our love, whatever is not part of our love, is not something that we both brought to it. So whatever was in addition to us, like there's certain aspects of us that aren't part of this, the two hemispheres joined together, that goes by the wayside. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's the right track. And I would just add that he's actually kind of, I think, making a statement, like just saying a truth. By the way, ma'am, whatever dies was not mixed equally. Then the next phrase is important. If our two loves be one, or you and I love so alike that none do slacken, none can die. So because we're mixed perfectly, we are going to live forever, eternal, right? So he has a proposition that whatever dies, right, dies there and then does not die at the end, because, and the chemistry thing is, the way you're putting it, I think, is accurate. If you put the wrong sodium with alkali, or I don't know anything about chemistry, and it's going to explode if you have the wrong proportions. You don't mix it, but they're mixed perfectly. That's his next statement.
Okay. So mixed perfectly. All right.
So that's the poem.
So what would you say? I'm trying to identify now kind of a theme or a deeper meaning here. So what is it saying about love? Is it saying, okay, I have somebody that I'm matched up well with?
Well, let me narrow it down for you a little bit. Does this have to be, so all we know about it is that there's two lovers in a bed, basically, right? Or because they're waking up and saying good morning. It's the good morrow.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting spin on things there. This is the next morning. This is after they've met, after they've fallen in love, after they've made love.
Well, here's what I wanted to say to narrow it down.
Yeah.
Is there anything in here for evidence that, as to the nature of their grander relationship? Like, are they married? Are they two married people who just found each, they're cheating? Did they just, like you just said, did they just meet each other last night and have a one night stand? Or have they been, are there any indications about any aspect of that level of the relationship or that aspect of the relationship?
So the only thing that I'm seeing is that first stanza is talking about what my childhood rather than other things, like examples like when I was in college and and went to my classes. I don't remember anything the teacher taught because didn't exist till I met you. And the only times I was happy was when I dreamed the dream of you.
And let me read the last two lines of Romeo and Juliet again for the first time. Did my heart love till now? Forswear it, sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night. So I the way I take it, and this is just my viewing of it, is this poem actually says nothing about their previous relationship. Even in this first stanza, he's saying that, just like Romeo, who, by the way, was in love with Rosalind, quote unquote, right before this, right? And, he's saying that all that doesn't matter now that I've seen you, right? It was like I was asleep, like the seven sleepers' den, and now I'm awakened by seeing you. Now, you're right, though, that it could be exactly what you're saying. My point that I'm trying to make in terms of the relationship is there's no indication of the grander aspect of the relationship. They could be married. If you read this and think these are two 45-year-old married couples and he's kind of reawakening to how much he loves her, it would still apply. You could still say the same thing. If they were childhood friends that became lovers, it would see the same thing. If he was married to somebody he didn't love, she was married to somebody she didn't love, they met each other, fell in love and had sex one night, this could still apply to that, right? So it doesn't say anything about that. It's really focused on this one aspect of, this universe that they've built in this moment, which is why I, chose it for Romantic Spark.
Yeah, I can see that. It's kind of like an extension of what Romeo is feeling when he sees Juliet for the first time.
Yeah.
So the one part that's making me think this is early on in the relationship is that last stanza, the second half of the last stanza. Whatever dies was not equally mixed. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike that none do slacken, none can die. So he's kind of talking about, okay, what will come in the future, right?
Yeah, and I this is the romantic comedy of driving off into the sunset thing. For me, I hope they get together. I don't know anything about them. I don't know who this guy is. He's saying it all, and I do feel this about you. I mean, he could be a nut in his room dreaming about somebody for all I know. It could be, all just some crazy guy who's stalking some woman. Like, I don't know, because I don't see her side of things. But I want them to be together. I like you're saying, I want them to be mixed. I just don't know,
All right. So if you were to walk into the National Gallery with this poem in hand, and you stepped into the gallery with the young woman at the window, and you saw her looking at you, and you, like you said, immediately felt you liked it.
Yeah.
You liked her. What would you take from the poem to tell her?
Well, let's see.
Would you use this poem to describe your feelings towards her at that moment?
Yes, I think in a way, for sure. Yeah, I mean, because I said I liked her. Obviously, it's a painting, so it's a little weird to say. But like, if it were like a love that I felt
I like
for this
being
person,
weird like that. I like being weird like that, Kirk.
Yeah, I know.
I want to that's the whole thing about my whole approach to art appreciation. Be weird like that.
Yeah.
Imagine that she's real.
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
so
but exactly, and you can imagine making a world, a universe in that, like going into that climbing into that window and making a universe out of that room, right? Like that kind of feeling. I think of the good morrow of enjoying that would be very present for what this poem is saying, as well as the feeling that you get from that painting. or that I got from the painting.
Oh, well, can I tell you the two lines that
Yeah, let's hear
as
it.
I'm looking over the poem? So if I'm there in front of her and I'm looking at her, and listener, I recommend like holding up the image of the painting as you listen to these lines to see how effective it might be. I might say something to her like, I wonder by my troth what thou and I did till we loved.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say would be, let's see, I would say, and now good morrow to our waking souls, which watch not one another out of fear. And you use that word openness to describe her, and then that good morning. I mean, even the light shining on her face as coming out of the darkness of this room, as she stares at you, and this lack of fear that she has as she's looking at you. And I want to look back at her with that lack of fear.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. And you know, the other thing that when you were pointing out that when you walk into this art museum or the museum and she's looking at you, my face in thine eye, thine in mine appears. And true plain hearts do in the faces rest. So it's kind of like I'm seeing myself in her, reflected in her adoration for me.
And that goes back to the point you were making about the power of like.
The power of like. Yeah, and it's also like, you know, when I think about my personal experience with the when I was telling you about, which I have other ones like that where I'm working and this seems to be a motif of a female that becomes attracted to me personally, is through my work often, and it's the look, but she's reflecting something that I'm doing, right? Because it's different if I'm just like sitting there, you know, chewing on food, and then she's like, ooh, what a stud, right? Versus I'm doing the thing that I love and I'm passionate. And so in other words, the thing that I value and what makes me me and that lights me up, that's what is reflecting in her eyes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what you're hoping that she's looking at is not just he's hanging out with his buddies, but maybe you're driving along on your motorcycle. Zoomed by.
Yeah. What a bad mofo. Scary guy. And then and it's like, ooh, all right. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, and there's certain values that are reflected. And I think that because the painting that you show doesn't illustrate that it's love for whatever values you see. It doesn't have the other person. So we can't see. He could be a knight. He could be a painter. He could be a powerful man. So she could be in. I mean, there's a lot of things she could be in love with, just like the poem doesn't really tell you the nature of the people in it, right? Or the relationship that are in. We just know the feeling of the awakening soul.
The feeling of an awakening soul. That's a part of a romantic spark that I think is really powerful. Maybe when you know that romantic spark is there. So that's what the poem captures, and I think that's what this painting captures as well in her.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that there's a lot in common between the two kinds of moments here.
Can I say one thing to maybe connect them? What if now this may be radical, so don't get mad. But no, I'm just kidding. But what if we reframed this whole thing with the poem and the painting together, where she is the lover in this poem and John Donne, the author, is the man, and he had just left and she's watching him walk away? What if you like phrased it in that kind of story where they were just in this universe together and she's watching him as, you know, he's going about his day or something like that. So it's kind of like two husband and wife. What do you think of that? Is that too crazy?
Right. Yeah. No. So imagine something a little bit different there, that they've already had the moment and they've had their romantic spark, and then this is her looking after. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's both ways. So this is his romantic spark. And so, you know, imagine this woman in the painting an hour earlier was lying in bed with the author. He said this to her and she didn't say anything. And then he left, right? Because he had to go to work like we all do in real life. And then as he's leaving, she's looking at him in the same way. And then her nurse is like, getting the day ready. And so she's looking too. And she's like, there is a feeling when you see young love that, kind of, you can't help but smile. Unless you are, what's that movie, As Good as It Gets? With
yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, with Jack Nicholson, where he, whenever he sees lovers, he like he snarls at them, and he's cynical about it. He's like, oh God, they're gonna be divorced in 5 years, right? That's one way of looking at it. This nurse has the opposite of feeling, which is to look at this young love. They're so resplendent, and it's like such a beautiful thing to see this young love.
I like that contrast between that Jack Nicholson character and her, because the nurse does add a little bit more of, okay, this is good stuff here. This is positive.
It would be totally different if she was sneering.
Yeah.
The whole thing would be changed.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the poem is called The Good Morrow, and I think I would call this painting The Good Morrow as well.
Yeah.
Great combination. And it's
first time we've really kind of matched them.
Yeah.
In the past, we've always had quite a different take on the concepts.
Well, the artworks had a different take.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Our selections.
So, speaking of, the concept, what's going to be our next topic?
Okay, so next time you guys go to Surprised by Art for the group on Facebook, so you can vote. And here are the three topics. Now, we decided to choose single word topics, concepts. So here are the three: aloneness, empathy, anger, as three separate topics. So
aloneness, empathy, anger. They feel very different, and I think there's going to be a very different kind of artwork that comes. But I think that they all have to do with human relationships, your relationship with somebody. Do you want to have one? How do you have one? Or do you want to get angry at them? So I'll be very curious to see what everybody is interested in focusing on. I think, do you have one that you're especially interested in, Kirk?
Yeah, you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Aloneness. Yeah, I already have a poem. I love that picked out for it. And I think, going with everything that's going on right now, it's very prevalent. It's very on our minds. Plus, I'm an only child, so it's something that I've thought about a lot. Being alone is I think a kind of a unique experience to only children. So, and not that other people can't be alone, by the way. Of course they can, but I think there's just kind of like you're always somewhat alone because you don't have siblings to kind of explore the world with as a kid.
All right.
What about you?
If you want to hear what Kirk has to say
now, what about you,
aloneness, I'm reserving my vote for later on. You'll have to check in on the Facebook group to find out where I might be leaning. All right, Kirk, this is fun. Thank you for sharing a poem with me.
All right, thank you. See you guys next time.